Years passed after Amir's legendary journey to claim the Golden Horn, and his people knew him as Amir the Brave. His story became the foundation of tales told throughout Zazzau, inspiring young and old alike. His name echoed through the valleys, along the rivers, and into the heart of the city, where he served alongside his father, King Musa, learning the wisdom and demands of leadership. But one cold evening, a messenger ran into the royal court, his face pale with sorrow, and delivered news that shook the kingdom to its core. King Musa had fallen ill while visiting a neighboring village. The finest healers in the kingdom tried everything, but within days, the mighty king succumbed to his illness, leaving Zazzau in a period of deep mourning. With heavy hearts, the people of Zazzau looked to Amir, the young prince who was now their king. Grieving the loss of his father and suddenly burdened with the weight of ruling a kingdom, Amir struggled with self-doubt. He had always known this day would come, but never so soon. He was Amir the Brave, yet he felt unprepared for the challenges of leadership. He knew that while courage had been enough for his journey as a prince, wisdom, strategy, and restraint would be the test of his reign as king. As the sun rose on the first day of his rule, Amir stood before the people of Zazzau. With a steady voice, he promised them peace, protection, and prosperity. "I vow to serve Zazzau with courage, wisdom, and strength, as my father before me," he declared. The people raised their voices in agreement, but Amir knew that the greatest challenges were still to come. As the kingdom of Zazzau mourned, whispers of Amir's youth and inexperience reached the ears of neighboring kingdoms, particularly in Kano, where King Solim ruled. King Solim was an ambitious and calculating man, always on the lookout for any weakness in neighboring territories. He saw Amir's ascension as an opportunity to expand his influence and power, especially as Zazzau controlled a critical trade route and fertile lands. King Solim gathered his most trusted advisors, warriors, and spies. He spoke of how Zazzau had long been a rival, how their lands and resources could strengthen Kano's might. The young king, he reasoned, would be too overwhelmed by the death of his father and the burdens of rule to mount a strong defense. Solim's advisors eagerly agreed, convinced that Amir's inexperience would leave Zazzau vulnerable. Thus, within a month of King Musa's passing, rumors reached Amir's court. Traders and travelers spoke of Kano's army preparing for war, its soldiers marching along Zazzau's borders. Tension filled the air, and Zazzau's people began to worry, fearing that Amir's reign would be marked by loss and invasion. Amir himself felt the weight of these rumors. He knew Kano's army was large, its warriors fierce, and its king ruthless. Yet, he also knew he could not let fear dictate his actions. Amir called his generals, advisors, and trusted warriors into the Grand Council room, where he laid out a map of Zazzau and its surrounding regions. He studied each detail carefully, tracing his fingers along the rivers, valleys, and mountains that shaped their borders. He had grown up exploring these lands, and every hill and river was as familiar as his own name. To his generals, Amir spoke with calm resolve. "Kano underestimates us," he said. "They think we are weak because I am young. But we will show them that wisdom is not bound to age. We will fight not with brute strength but with strategy." Amir knew that he needed to outthink King Solim. He spent days studying old battle tactics, seeking wisdom in the stories his father had once told him. He learned from the legends of Zazzau's past kings, each known for their courage, intellect, and cleverness. Finally, he formed a plan that would require cunning and precision rather than the largest army. Amir decided to send scouts into the mountains near the border of Zazzau and Kano, placing them along narrow paths and hidden in the cliffs. These scouts would watch and report any movement of Kano's army. At the same time, he ordered his soldiers to build wooden decoys along the border, creating the illusion of a vast force guarding Zazzau's perimeter. This tactic, he hoped, would slow Kano's approach, forcing them to proceed with caution. Days later, the scouts returned with reports of Kano's army advancing. The soldiers of Zazzau prepared for battle, readying their spears, shields, and armor. Amir knew that Kano's forces were larger and better trained for open combat. Instead of meeting them in the open plains, where Kano's numbers would overpower them, he ordered his soldiers to retreat to the hills, where the narrow paths and dense trees would favor smaller, agile forces. When the army of Kano reached Zazzau, they found no soldiers waiting on the plains. Confused by the empty lands, King Salim's forces hesitated, wondering if they had miscalculated Zazzau's defenses. But as they moved forward, they found themselves funneled into narrow mountain passes, where the soldiers of Zazzau, hidden among the rocks and trees, launched a surprise attack. Amir's soldiers struck swiftly, using the element of surprise to scatter and confuse the invaders. King Salim's army tried to regroup, but the narrow paths restricted their movements. Soldiers stumbled and fell, unable to fight as effectively in such confined spaces. Amir's strategy had worked. Kano's forces were struggling, slowed down by the unfamiliar terrain and the ambush tactics of Zazzau's army. Though the battle was fierce, Amir's forces held their ground, pushing Kano's soldiers back down the mountain. But King Salim was not easily discouraged. Enraged by his army's losses, he ordered his men to encircle Zazzau, cutting off all supplies in an attempt to starve the kingdom into submission. He knew that if Zazzau's people were deprived of food and water, they would eventually surrender. Amir's people grew anxious. They worried about the shortage of food, the lack of trade, and the looming threat of starvation. Amir, too, felt the weight of the siege pressing down on him, but he refused to let his people see his fear. Each day, he walked through the city, speaking words of encouragement to his people, promising them that he would find a way to protect them. To break the siege, Amir turned to his knowledge of Zazzau's land. He knew of hidden water sources and underground tunnels that could sustain his people. He ordered his men to dig a series of concealed wells, providing water to the city despite Kano's blockade. He also reached out to neighboring allies, arranging for supplies to be smuggled into the kingdom through secret mountain paths that only a few knew. As the siege dragged on, King Salim grew frustrated. His army was running low on supplies, and he could not understand how Zazzau continued to endure. Desperation and anger clouded his judgment, driving him to make a final, risky decision. Determined to end the siege, King Salim ordered an all-out assault on Zazzau's walls. His forces launched themselves at the gates, battering them with all their might. Amir's soldiers defended the walls fiercely, but the force of Kano's assault was overwhelming. It seemed as if Zazzau would finally fall. But Amir had one final plan. As King Salim's soldiers pressed against the walls, Amir signaled his hidden forces stationed outside the city, positioned in the hills surrounding Zazzau. These forces, previously unseen by Kano, launched a surprise attack from behind, catching Salim's men off guard. Trapped between the city walls and Amir's hidden forces, the army of Kano found itself surrounded. Amir led his soldiers with strength and courage, fighting alongside them as they pushed back Salim's forces. The battle raged, but Amir's strategic advantage turned the tide. Salim's soldiers, caught off guard and weakened from the siege, began to falter. The mighty force that had once threatened to overwhelm Zazzau was now breaking apart under Amir's tactics and the fierce determination of Zazzau's people. Amir met King Salim face to face on the battlefield. The two leaders stared each other down, their soldiers watching in tense silence. Salim, exhausted and defeated, tried to attack, but Amir's skill and composure proved unmatched. With a final decisive move, Amir disarmed Salim, sparing his life but ending the battle. With the battle won, Amir ordered that Salim's remaining soldiers be treated with respect and allowed to return to Kano, carrying with them the story of Zazzau's strength and Amir's wisdom. As the sun rose, bathing the kingdom in golden light, Amir stood among his people, victorious not only in battle but in spirit. The people of Zazzau celebrated, their cheers echoing through the valleys and up to the mountains. Amir's actions had proven not only his courage but his ability to lead with intelligence and restraint. He had protected his kingdom, outsmarted a powerful enemy, and secured peace for his people.